Hi, and welcome back to Miles Shared. I'm Adam from Meandering Miles, and today I'm joined by Scott Matlock, better known online as the Hoosier Cruiser. Scott is a long distance rider based in Bloomington, Indiana, and one of the most passionate advocates I know for riding in the Midwest. He's explored 49 of the 50 states, tackled multiple iron butt rides, and still makes time to highlight the beauty of his home state. He often rides two up with his wife Jovi, and together they've built a life around travel, exploration, and making the most of every mile. Welcome, Scott. It's great to have you.
All right. You too. Thank you.
So let's start with what got you first into riding? How did you first discover motorcycles?
Honestly, it's not a real exciting story. One day, just on a whim, I thought it would be kind of fun to give it a try. And you may be able to call it a early midlife crisis. I got one for my 30th birthday, which I'm 42 now. So I've been riding for about 12 years. And I'll be honest with you, I almost gave up. Like I'd never even sat on a motorcycle before. So it was just, very foreign to me. Luckily I stuck with it, went to empty parking lots and practiced and, just kind of ramped up from there. But yeah, it was nothing more than just getting one out of, curiosity.
And so, what was your first bike, and what do you ride now?
It was a Honda Shadow, and then I
Mm-hmm.
got a Kawasaki Vulcan. And then the next bike was a 2013 CVO Road King, a Harley. It's
Mm-hmm.
still my favorite paint job of any production bike ever. That's why I fell in love with that. And then in the spring of 2020, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, we got a CVO Road Glide just because it had more bells and whistles on it for
Mm-hmm.
long distance traveling, like the stereo and GPS and so on. And
Right.
that 2020 Road Glide is still what we're on currently.
So how does the Hoosier Cruiser come about?
So, one of my favorite ways to ride is to go out and get lost on purpose and try to find like new roads and cool points of interest. So, I work long shifts, but because of that, my weekends are long. So, on the days my wife still has to work, I'll just go get lost, be like, oh, this road's really fun. And I'll keep roads and destinations in a Word file so I can remember those and show her and my friends. Then I thought, this information may be useful to other Indiana riders. So I'm going to start a Facebook page where I can share this information with them. And that way it'll give them some other options as far as fun routes and unique destinations. And in general, I'm a, fairly social person. I enjoy storytelling. So that's pretty much how my Hoosier Cruiser page came about on Facebook, just to help other people learn about fun places to visit in Indiana.
Mm-hmm. And so I noticed you have just about 2,000 people following your page on Facebook. Do you get a sense, or do you have a sense of sort of where they come from, and or is it mostly folks from Indiana, or do you get a lot of folks from around the country?
A majority are from Indiana, from me sharing posts on other Indiana Facebook pages. But I'm on some other long distance riding pages where if there's an interesting post from that page, I may share it on those long distance riding pages and get some likes and follows there as well. And if I'm on other motorcycle pages and people are like, hey, I'm going to be traveling and I'm passing through Indiana, what are some, things we can see
Mm-hmm.
along the way? I'll post the link to my page, be like, hey, this is a riding guide you can scroll through and use and find some fun roads or a good restaurant, something cool to see.
Awesome. And what was it like? So you ride with your wife, Jovi. What was it like introducing her to motorcycling? Is that something she had always wanted to do, or is it something that
Um,
you convinced her, or she convinced you?
yeah, so when we first got together, I told her up front, I was like, hey, I ride quite a bit. Like, I'm not going to skip out on you on, holidays or randomly take off for weeks at a
Mm-hmm.
time, but it is something that's a big part of my life. And fortunately, she's pretty much joined me on the adventures. She had never really ridden before and has
Mm-hmm.
totally fallen in love with it. She's done a couple of iron butt rides with me. We do a lot of long distance trips. There may be sometimes on the weekend or during the week, I may go do a little, solo excursion. Or if the weather's really cold, I'll put on the heated gear and, ride around for a little bit while she chills at the house and then, come home. But yeah, long story short, she has really taken to it, and it's been fantastic.
Does she ever think about getting her own bike, or is she perfectly
Um,
happy on the back of yours?
she's fine on the back as long as she's got some, good music to listen to. She's perfectly content, and she's very, I guess you could say, small statured. So I think, even something like a smaller bike, I don't know if she sees this, she may tease me, would be difficult for her just, to get off the kickstand and ride. But yeah, she's totally content in the back, just soaking in the scenery and listening to some music.
Great. So you mentioned long distance rides, and that's something that you and I share a passion for going long distance, taking multiple days. What are some of the most memorable rides you've been on?
Um, One that really sticks out is when I had my second motorcycle, the Kawasaki Vulcan. I was invited with some really good friends to go to like an owners group kind of meeting in Maggie Valley, North Carolina, which I'm in
Hmm.
Bloomington, Indiana. And with only just doing some weekend cruising, to me, that sounded crazy. Like, oh my God, like going across state lines. And I had maybe ridden, maybe a 100-mile day up until that point. It's like, what do you do if it rains and all these variables? And I was really nervous. And
Hmm.
then I took the trip, and in the middle of that is when I really started to understand the culture of everything. It's like you have all these people from all over the country who put the time, effort, and money to meet each other just because of motorcycles, and that was really amazing to me. So that's one that definitely sticks out and what really, got the interest going in, long distance riding and taking trips.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I've been to several sort of specific brand bike rallies. I've been to some Harley rallies and I've been to some BMW rallies. But I've also been to, just ride to coffee and ride, other short group rides that are a bunch of different people. And I think it's fascinating that even within the same brand or when you have a bunch of different brands are coming together, the variety of types of riders, the variety of, walks of life, people that come together just to admire each other's bikes, to talk about where they want to go, to share their riding stories. It's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, it's literally changed my life. When we got married, aside from one really good friend I went to high school with, everybody in my wedding party were people I met through riding motorcycles, and I think that's really cool,
Wow.
just those connections you get.
Wow, that's awesome. And so you did a ride down to Maggie Valley, and that gave you the bug, and then you
Yep.
started planning some other long trips.
Yep,
Um,
that was the spark for sure.
and so when we talked to prepare for this conversation, you had mentioned one of your favorite places being the Icefields Parkway,
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
and that's a place that I love as well. And so I wanted to ask you about your experience because going from Indiana to Maggie Valley um, is pretty short compared to going up to the Icefields Parkway.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, that trip we took last summer, and it was, I think, 16 or 17 days. So we took maybe around 3 days to get to the area, just a mix of some interstate and state roads, just so it
Hmm.
wasn't so monotonous. We had been to Glacier National Park before, but we went again and did the opposite entrance,
Hmm.
to get different views and things like that. But that area, like Icefields and Banff National Park, it just makes for a really good, efficient trip because there are just so many different things branching off of it as far as like other fun roads, national parks, lakes, and so on. So what we did is we went north. We would get an Airbnb in a certain spot for a couple days, kind of explore a certain radius, go farther north, do the same thing, get another Airbnb, explore, and basically made our way back down. And I'd say that's the best trip we've ever taken. And everything just fell into place as far as like weather, no issues with bikes, great restaurants, We went with another couple, two of our best friends, and it was just, yeah, it was amazing. I would encourage everybody to try to get up that way at some point.
So when I you mentioned last summer, when did you go? I happened to be on the Icefields Parkway in the end of June last year.
Okay. We went, I want to say it was early July. And when we got
Ah,
back, it was just a week or two later when they had all those fires, which was really sad. But yeah, we just
yeah.
barely dodged those.
Yeah, I was there, I guess I was there June 24th, so maybe just a week or so before you.
Okay.
And I heard about those fires when I was after that I went down to Glacier and then down to Yellowstone, and that's when I heard about the fires that just devastated Jasper. And it's
Yeah, it's
just
really sad.
it really is. But yeah, they've rebuilt a lot of that area, my understanding, and are continuing to work on it. But that road from Jasper to Banff to Calgary, just stunning.
It is for sure. Those lakes, I always thought when people posted pictures of the lakes, they would
Hmm.
Photoshop them to make the water kind of like glow more blue than what it actually is. But no, they
Right.
really look like that in person. I had never seen anything like that.
Right. And I have a note here. I'm supposed to ask you about Pado Lake.
Yes, so that was my personal favorite stop was Pado Lake. What I just mentioned as far as like the water looking like it's almost like there's a chemical in it making it glow.
Hmm.
And it was just when we were there, it was very sunny. So the water was just very vibrant and just sensory overload. There's a nice like walkway you can go up to see the mountains and everything in the background. And just I remember staring at that and like not even wanting to blink so it would like burn into my memory.
It's the um I have a picture of myself standing, and I happen to be wearing a blue um BMW riding jersey, and the blue of the water is bluer than the blue on my shirt.
Yep. Yeah, they're all beautiful, like Moraine, Louise, Hector Lake, Abraham Lake. Um, just yeah, it may be the most beautiful area I've ever laid eyes on so far.
And did you do Glacier on that same trip, or was that a different trip?
Yeah, we did. So we went to Glacier the year before,
Hmm.
west to east, and then on the trip
Okay.
last summer we did east to west, the St. Mary's entrance.
Yes. Okay. So did you happen to go down through the Waterton Lakes, which is the sort of it's the Canadian side of Glacier National Park, and so it's just over the
Okay.
it it's
Yeah,
still
we did.
part of Glacier, but it's the Canadian side.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did because we also went to. So a lot of people don't know there's two glacier national parks, one here in the U.S. and one in Canada, and we did go to both of those.
Hmm.
I I'm pretty sure we did. We just went to so many places. I could probably scroll back through Facebook and find pictures, but more than likely, yeah.
Yeah, that was a beautiful, beautiful place. I remember, sitting having dinner in the little town, and just having deer just walking up and down the street.
Yeah. And they're so
It was
used to
pretty
you.
wild.
Like at some point, we there was a bear on the side of the road, and obviously we're not going to mess with Mother Nature and get too close. But there are people getting within 6 feet of this thing, and it was just eating, and didn't have a care in the world. It was like a dog.
That was a tense moment for me as well. Coming when I was leaving Glacier, right near the St. Mary's exit, I there was a grizzly that was just meandering across the street, or across the street from where I was riding, and it's a little terrifying.
Oh yeah, yeah. We didn't
But
get
the
too close. There were a lot of
yeah,
tourists wanting to get close pictures and things, and it's like, don't prod at Mother
nope.
Nature too close there.
No, no, not at all. And so I did the same as you. I stayed in Glacier for a couple of days, and I went from St. Mary's to the western entrance, and then I turned around and went back to St. Mary's the same day. And so I did both directions on the same day, and it was an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous day. But I also have to say that was one of the most. Let's just say that road is pretty cliffy.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, a lot
There
of
was
roads like out west, there's not a whole lot of guardrails, so you get soaking in the scenery and have your head on the swivel. You got to pay attention because Just takes one little mistake and you're tumbling down to the road you were just on to get up to the point that you're at in that moment.
Yeah, it was one of the I remember uh, I'm not great with heights, but the going to the Sun Road was a road that I really really wanted to ride, and so I wasn't gonna let anything get in my way. And I remember sort of just talking to myself on that route, like you're doing great, it's okay, and just looking down over the edge and all right, it's good.
Yeah, we've been fortunate to have visited a lot of national parks, and there's still some on the list I want to knock out. Glacier, I'd put easily top three for sure.
Nice. And I also want to talk a little bit about your Iron Butt experiences. So, for
Okay.
those who don't know, Iron Butt is 1,000 miles in 24 hours.
Yeah, so they have a lot of different challenges as far as like, how many days they may be or mileage requirements. But their most popular ride, like the basic ride, is the Saddle Soar, which is 1,000 miles in 24 hours. There's a Bun Burner Gold, which is 1,500 miles in 24 hours. And they have a big list on their website with all sorts of different themes and things where you can earn some certificates.
And you've done several of these. What's
Yeah, I
what's
think
the what's the appeal? What do you like about it?
I think I've done 21 of them so far, and
Oh.
I try to do 6 or 7 per year. There are people out there who do a lot more than that, but I feel like the 6 or 7 kind of gives me my fill for that type of riding. Um, every once in a while, it's hard to explain, and a lot of people actually criticize those rides, like, "Oh, you don't get to see anything. It's all interstate or whatever." But usually, I do try to mix it up and do a couple 100 miles off the interstate, just to break up the monotony. I try to find a decent sit down restaurant to relax a little bit and a couple points of interest. And as long as you don't wait around at gas stations for, 45 minutes at a time, you can still knock them out in a decent amount of time. Part of it, one, is I just genuinely enjoy the saddle time of being on a motorcycle. I
Hmm.
don't even really mind the interstate, unless it's like, rush hour traffic through a big city. That's not very fun. But if I can just
No.
set the cruise and listen to some music, yeah, I really don't mind the interstate. And then the challenge aspect of it, it's not to, rub it in people's face or, think I'm just, just amazing writer, but it is fun collecting the different theme certificates and putting them up on the garage and just, talking with other long distance riders like, hey, have you done this one? And so on.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's just something. I've got a couple friends who like to do them. My wife's actually done a couple with me. Um, and it's hard to explain. We're all wired differently, and that kind of riding may not be for everybody. Just like I kind of compare it to those people who do those obstacle courses where they crawl through mud and scale
Hmm.
walls and things like that just to get a little trophy. No part of me wants to do that. Like, it's just not my thing. But for them, they just, the rush of it and the gratification of the accomplishment. And that's just the best way I can describe it.
And I was reading on Facebook that you met somebody interesting just the other day.
Oh, absolutely. So Chris Hopper, I believe, has the record for consecutive 1,000-mile days ridden on a motorcycle. He rode 100,000 miles in 100 days for charity back in 2021. He was recognized by Harley Davidson. He did it on a road glide. The Iron Butt Association tracked him with a fleet tracker and GPS, so it was all legit. So he has set out this year to break his own record and try to ride 101,000 miles in 101 days. And he has an interactive map you can look at to see where he's located at the time. And I saw he was about 2 hours south of me on Monday. So I sent him a Facebook message and I was like, hey, if you can swing it, I'd love to, meet up and buy you lunch. So he rode about an hour north. I rode about an hour south, and we met up for a little bit and ate some food and chatted for a little bit. And he was just, yeah, really cool, down to earth guy, doing some great things, mainly for charity, which is a cool thing
Hmm.
about it.
Nice. And there's a great example of what we were talking about earlier and just the community and camaraderie that people
Right.
who ride motorcycles have. You never
Right.
know who you're going to meet and where you're going to meet them. And, always have that, those memories and those connections. And,
Yeah.
it's a great part of this, great part of the experience. I got to say, I saw 100,000 miles in 100 days. And I thought, for me, that's like 10 sets of tires.
Yeah, so he has some kind of deal worked out with his local dealership in Houston where
Huh?
every around 10,000 miles he stops in to get the maintenance he needs and then gets right back on the road.
Oh wow. Okay, so he's doing sort of hub and spoke from Houston. Okay, interesting. That's wild. So when you sort of think about those iron butts and you think about the long distance riding that you do, I wanted to ask a little bit about um, planning and sort of what's your strategy for like how do you combine your iron butt rides, your long trips, your local weekenders? How do you sort of approach that and planning those trips?
So the iron butt rides to me at this point really just feel like a really long weekend day of riding. Like I remember my first iron butt ride and I planned like I was going to ride through the apocalypse, like I was going to be gone for a week or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you want to be prepared because it is a long day. But just the basics as far as having, the clothing you need for various weather conditions, some snacks, couple basic tools, and so on. I really don't prepare much different for the iron butt rides than I would just a normal day of riding. Again, it's just a whole lot longer. As far as a long trip, especially riding two up, um, when you go to pack, as you probably know, the bike loads up very quickly, like the real estate,
Yes.
diminishes. So I tell
Yes.
people you have to be realistic about what you want to bring and what you need to bring. There's little tricks as far as like, if my wife wants to bring certain shampoos or lotions, buying little travel bottles like what you'd use on an airplane to save room.
Mm-hmm.
Always prioritize clothing for weather, rather than just bringing like, a fresh set of clothes for every single day. If you forget something, there's always a department store nearby. No need to freak out. And for a really long trip, like if we're going to be gone for 2 weeks, we'll bring maybe 4 sets of fresh clothing. And then along the trip, just do a load of laundry or two. So we're not, jam packed in the
Mm-hmm.
saddle bags and the tour pack. And there's even been times where if along the way we've bought souvenirs or shirts and things like that, we'll actually ship them some things back to our house to save room. So as you do more big trips, you learn little tricks like that. And again, being realistic about what you actually need to bring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I discovered the laundry sheets as opposed to carrying laundry detergent because they pack
Yeah. Yep.
flat.
Exactly. Yeah, we've got little travel packets and just, at some point in the middle of the trip, get to a hotel that has a washer and dryer and get freshened up and go from there.
Yeah, and so do you typically do hotels or
Um,
camping or combination?
it can be a mix. So early in the trip, when we're just having big days gaining ground, we'll ride as far as people want to. It gets later in the evening, people are getting tired. Um, we'll hop on Priceline or something like that, start finding hotels. When we get to the area where we want to explore, we may do a hotel or an Airbnb for a couple days so we can actually,
Mm-hmm.
unload the bikes, relax for a little bit. And like what I mentioned earlier, when we did the Canada trip, kind of explore the perimeter of the area and then move on to a different region. So for the most part, it's a mix of hotels and Airbnbs.
Yeah, that's a really I really like that approach to planning your trip where you sort of go from hop from one place to another place and then spend several days in that place so you can really fully explore it. When I did my trip last year, it was 112 days, but it was I think the most I spent in one hotel or in one place was 3 nights, and so it was always I there were places that I felt like I didn't really get to explore as much as I wanted to, and I wish I had taken that kind of approach to some places. The ones that stand out to me are Bryce Canyon and Zion
Oh,
Canyon
beautiful.
national
Yeah,
parks.
Zion is one of my favorites. That's one I really, advocate for people to check out.
Yeah, because I basically kind of rode through and didn't really spend time hiking and going through all the places. I didn't do the Narrows or any of the things like that, and that's something that I actually wish I had done differently on my trip, and so I
Yeah.
could spend more time. I sort of wish I had done a little bit more like the way you do it.
And we try not to book too far in advance because then, like, let's say you book a hotel early in the morning and then there's bad weather. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you may be able to cancel, but you don't want to bind yourself to a situation like that. Or let's say, evening time rolls around and everybody's feeling real good and they're like, hey, let's bust out another 100 miles just so we make the next day a little easier. Just
Right.
situations like that. So have some sort of plan, but be flexible enough where it's still an adventure. Like if I'm on vacation, I don't want to follow this strict itinerary, but you still want to have some kind of structure so you can maximize the trip and see everything you want to see. So there's a balance to it.
So that one of the questions I love to ask people is about on road trips their biggest sort of serendipitous surprise, their
Okay.
biggest unexpected thing that turned out well.
I thought about that one a lot and it's kind of hard to answer. So I'll give an example for one of the recent Iron Butt rides a friend and I did. So it was the Halloween themed Iron Butt ride that they call the Spooky Sore 1000. And I had this idea, which it wasn't mandatory, but I wanted to find points of interest that were Halloween related just to kind of add to the challenge. So, for example, we went to, there's a scary West Virginia. So we stopped in that town and got a picture. And I had this bright idea to go down this road called Hell for Certain Road in Kentucky. That's literally the name of this road, and it's named that
Okay.
for a reason, which I know now. And my goal was to
Uh-oh.
get a picture of the road sign, like the official DOT road sign. So we get to this road and there's no road sign anywhere. So I'm like, man, all this work and we're not going to get the pic, which our GPS will show we were there. But this road was a mix of like mud, gravel, broken up pavement from when it used to be paved at some point. It was like mid 30s, raining. It was a really tough ride. Um, Switchbacks going up hills with potholes in the middle of them where there's no stopping and getting your angle. Like you had to just commit and go and hope you didn't tip your bike over. And I'm thinking, man, my buddy behind me, he's probably cussing me and not wanting to ride with me ever again, which we joke around about this a lot. So we get to the end of this road and there's a big hillside with rocks and someone or a group of people, and I'll send you the picture for these. We took a picture, painted this massive Looney Tunes mural. They're like very well done. I'm not just talking like, shady spray can graffiti. Like it was really, really nice work. Um, so we were on this road that was just extremely stressful. And we get to this mural and we stop, and it's like, everything we just went through, it was, we're going to look back on it and laugh. This is what makes the rides memorable. And it was cool just to see this massive painting out in the middle of nowhere on these rocks. So that's one thing I look back on where in the moment, I'm like, man, I wish I would have gotten on this road. And then we saw that, and it's like, you know what? That hour of stress was worth it just to kind of, get to this point.
I'll have to look that up. You said it was in Kentucky
Yeah, near Hazard, Kentucky. I'm talking
near
like
Has.
banjo music playing backwoods. Like the area itself was beautiful. And I
Yeah.
actually wouldn't mind going back to show other people. But with it being raining and, 36 degrees, it added to the stress level just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm actually next week I'm headed down through West Virginia and southeastern Kentucky,
Okay.
and I've been looking at. I found a website and a group called the Backroads of Appalachia.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. I have some patches from some of the roads I've been on for those.
Oh, great! Yeah, so I'm going to do some of those roads next week,
All
and
right.
I think it goes through that area. I might have to see if there's a road sign now. So you do a lot of riding.
I
You've
try to, yeah.
you're 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 married. Uh, you've got a job. What have you learned about sort of making the conscious decision to make riding a priority?
My wife and I always tell people, like, I don't mean for it to sound pretentious, but like, I don't think we ride a lot as much as a lot of other people just don't ride very much. Like, I understand what we're doing is more than the average person, but it doesn't feel over the top, if that makes sense. But the main thing is we love riding so much and just going out and exploring that we've based a lot of our financial decisions and way of living around that. Our road glide is the first and only new vehicle I've ever bought in my life. So I splurged a little on that just since, it's our main hobby. But aside from that, by design, we have, older, plain paid off vehicles. Our house isn't real fancy. We just don't live real flashy in general. So every time we get paid, we both put a certain amount of money in a travel account. And when during the winter, when that kind of slows down, it builds a buffer. So when the weather warms up, we're able to travel without worrying about getting our bills paid and so on. One variable that falls our way, which I've talked to you about, is the amount of vacation time the company we work for offers. I have a stepson, her son, he's grown, so no little kids around the house. Um, so yeah, we just make it a priority simply because we love doing it.
That's yeah. When you love doing something, you find a way to make it work.
Mhm.
So I another topic I wanted to talk about is so Indiana as a riding destination. What do you love about riding in Indiana, and what's special about it? What do you hope that most people would know that they might miss?
Indiana in general isn't known as a real big riding state, and I think a lot of people who don't live here imagine it just being like flat with a bunch of cornfields. Northern Indiana, there's some decent roads here and there and some things to see. But from about Indianapolis and further south, man, there's all
Hmm.
kinds of nice roads and really nice things to see. Like along the Ohio River, it's not much different than riding in parts of, Tennessee and Kentucky. We've got some unique things, such as, for example, Medora Covered Bridge. That's one of the longest historical covered bridges in the country. Tulip Trestle. I believe that may be the tallest rail trestle, at least in the country, and maybe even number two in the world. So things like that is like to share with people, like, pass through, check out my page. You'll find some good roads and things to see. And it's actually a really fun state to ride in, especially that southern portion.
And so when people look at your Indiana riding guide, you sort of how did it what are they going to see, and what are some of the things that you like to highlight?
Whenever I go for a ride, if I find a really fun, curvy scenic road, a nice mom and pop restaurant out in the middle of nowhere that's good, or I've come across sculptures, cool looking covered bridges, I'll make a post and share my Google route or a screenshot of the Google route, and then I'll just describe, maybe give a review for the restaurant, take pictures and things like that, so people can reference those things and know how to get there, and check out some of the same roads that I enjoyed.
Awesome. And so, as an interview about motorcycling, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you the gear and Farkle question of
Oh, okay.
what have you done to your motorcycle to make it yours, and to add things that make it comfortable or more functional for
Okay.
you.
So I can
Yeah,
tell you.
my favorite definition of farkle is a combination of function and sparkle.
All right, I like that. I like that. So my favorite thing I have ever purchased is heated gear. To be able to extend the riding season as long as roads are clear, has been great. Like it can be down in the 30s, and I'm sure there's people looking at me like, "Man, this guy's an idiot." But little do they know, I've got heated gear plugged in, and it's just as enjoyable as riding as if it were 70 out. So to be able to extend that riding season in a state that can have harsh winters has been fantastic. Another thing I tell people about as far as comfort is Airhawk pads. It's an inflatable pad you can put on your seat, and it's really helped us, especially for some of the long distance rides.
Hmm.
Um, I've upgraded the stereo a little bit since we enjoy listening to music, so that's always good. Always have the rain suits with us and a tire repair kit, and I've done a few cosmetic things to the bike just to make it my own. I
Hmm.
haven't gone crazy with like chasing horsepower and things like that, just since it is a long distance riding bike. Um, the suspension's upgraded just so it rides a little smoother.
Yeah,
Um,
with two people, that's important.
yeah, so upgraded some lighting here and there just so I can see better and be seen better. So
Hey, so I know very very little about heated gear, and I've always been curious, like with all the things, like do they plug into each other? Do they plug into a big hub? Like how does that
okay.
work?
So you have a harness going to your battery with an output, and basically in the warm months, I keep it tucked under the seat, and when it starts to cool down, I'll pull it out a little bit where that connection's just right there in front of me as I'm sitting on the bike. So you have a heated shirt with connections on the end that plug into heated gloves. And then from the
Ah,
shirt, it plugs into that harness going to the battery. And same with the pants and socks, they connect to each other. And there's a second output that goes to a controller um, with a single output that goes to that connection. So you can have socks, pants, shirt, and gloves. And then I have a wireless heat controller up on my fairing where I can adjust it while I'm riding. So when you first put on all the garments, it's a couple extra motions to go through. But once those are on, really the only thing you have to do is plug your gloves into the end of the shirt, plug your main harness into the battery harness, and then just adjust the heat controller however you want. But it's very quick and easy. And again, to add like thousands of miles onto the riding season, and
hmm.
keep at it on the weekends, it's I think it's totally worth it. And a lot of people imagine this big like wiring mess, and it's not like that at all. It's a pretty simple setup.
I'm one of those people that was imagining a big wiring mess
Okay.
and
I actually
imagining it all being very complicated, and I was like,
okay. So I have a video on my Hoosier Cruiser page where a couple years ago I discussed tips for cold weather riding, and I made a video showing how it all connects. So I can try to share that with you, and
well,
others.
that'd be yeah, that'd be great. I'll put a link to it. I'll put a card in the video, and people can check that out because I know
Okay.
that's one of the things. If I'm wondering, there's going to be other people wondering too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll get you that link for that video.
So I'd love to hear what you're planning. You mentioned that you're planning a. You've been to 49 of the 50 states, and you're planning a trip to Alaska.
Yeah. So back in January of this year, we went to Maui and rented a Harley for 3 days and knocked that off the list, which was our 49th state. We have some non motorcycle related plans for next year. So we're going to dial back a little bit. And then in 2027, we're hoping to knock Alaska off the list and round out all 50 states. Haven't really started much planning for that yet since it's a little ways out, but yeah, we're definitely excited for that.
Have you hit all the Canadian provinces as well?
We've been to three, so
Hmm.
Niagara Falls. I can't recall which province that is, and then when we did the trip last summer to the Icefields Parkway, that's I believe is it Alberta and British
Yep.
Columbia. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, so I
that's
think Niagara Falls, I think, is in Ontario.
okay.
Then you got Alberta and British Columbia.
And when we do our trip next year to the Philippines, we are definitely going to rent. They call them motorbikes, so it's not a full on motorcycle, not a full on scooter, kind of in between, but it's still two wheels. So I'm counting it. So
I count anything. I used to say I count anything with less than four wheels as a motorcycle, but then I did. I don't know if you saw. I did an interview with somebody last week, Bear, who lives down in Charlottesville, Virginia area, and he has a ultra classic, an electric glide ultra classic with a trike kit. So he has four wheels, but it's a motorcycle.
that's pretty wild.
So yeah, I thought it was anybody. I thought it was anyone with less than three wheels. So now I'm just saying, it's anybody without a roof.
Yeah, and it's, there may come a time where we have to make some adjustments and do something other than two wheels. I do like the leaning aspect, but the main thing
Yeah.
is just the openness. So, whatever you need to do to get that wind in your face, whether it's a, trike, spider, whatever, I'm cool with that. Again, there may come a time as we get a little bit older or some kind of circumstance where we got to make some adjustments and, so be it.
Yeah, I mean, as it's there have been some amazingly interesting developments in three wheel bikes and trikes, and I feel like if people have accessibility issues or if they have mobility issues or back problems or things like that, it's great to be able to adjust and continue exploring and traveling.
Yeah. There's occasionally there's a trike and even a slingshot that joins us on some of our rides. And, as long as you're enjoying what you do and, you're a, good person to hang out with, I don't care if you want to follow in a Jeep, whatever you want to do.
So, do you typically ride by yourself, just or two up with your wife, or are you typically riding
Um,
with a group?
It's a mix. So we do some two up riding, just us occasionally on the weekends. And then we've got a really close group of friends we'll occasionally meet up with on weekends. Um, Whenever we do the big trips, a week, 2 weeks, generally there's a couple other bikes with us, like the same, just like tight knit
Mhm.
group of people. I mentioned earlier the people who were in my wedding party. I'm like those guys and their wives and girlfriends, and man, it's a great feeling. So there's, the act of riding a motorcycle itself, I think is very fun. Um, Soaking in the scenery, lakes, mountains, and things like that. And also riding, like when my wife is with me and our good friends, like even though you're not talking to each other, there's just like a really cool connection I feel with everybody out on the road. It's just a really good feeling. And on the long trips in particular, I feel a little safer being with other bikes because you kind of have a bigger footprint going down the road also.
Right, and you've got people who can help you out if something if something does happen.
Exactly. I am not mechanical. I'm the kind of guy, if I work on something, there's going to be like three extra bolts sitting off to the side or something like that. So
That's not a good thing.
uh, I know my
That's not
limits.
a. So, you've been to 49 states. And I know that when I got back, one of the hardest questions, but most common questions people asked me was, well, what was your favorite place?
Oh, it's so
So
hard to answer. It's so
it is.
tough.
So I'm going to say, what are your top three states and why?
Okay. Montana is definitely up there because of Glacier National Park and my personal favorite road of all time so far, Beartooth Pass. It's just gorgeous. So by default, that's going to put that up there.
And did
Cal,
you do Beartooth and Chief Joseph?
yeah. So we've been on Beartooth three times, and the second time we did it, we did Chief Joseph also. And then part of it may be in Wyoming, but like Bighorn Scenic Byway and Medicine Wheel
Oh,
Passage. There's
yeah.
just a vibe about that area that clicks with me. I love it.
Hmm.
Um, California is definitely up there as far as like the broad range of things to see between like desert, mountains, lake. Like it's just got a little bit of everything. And then the third state, Maybe probably Utah, specifically
Hmm.
southern Utah, like you mentioned earlier, Bryce Canyon and Zion. Um, yeah, ask me on a different day, I may shuffle that around, but Montana would definitely be the constant, at least.
Yeah, I think I remember I did the Beartooth. I started in Red Lodge, rode down to towards Cody, caught up with the Chief Joseph, and then went the Chief Joseph north, and then the Beartooth back to Red Lodge, and that was just absolutely one. It's just incredible, incredible ride.
Did you feed the chipmunks?
Uh, I did not feed anything.
Oh my gosh. So you sit there with sunflower seeds in your hand at certain parts, and they will literally, like, they're not scared of people at all, like, get up in your hand. I took some videos of that also, but they're just used to people coming out there and feeding them snacks. And they're all healthy, if you know what I mean. They're all fat chipmunks.
So yeah, I didn't feed any critters, but I do have a funny. I did have a really funny experience, and as I was coming around a turn, there was a guardrail, and there were like four cows hanging their heads over the guardrail, just staring at me. Um, and as I came around the turn, there were rocks all over the road. I mean, big,
Yeah.
big rocks all over the road. And as after I swerved and avoided all the rocks, I look up and there was about six or seven cows walking along the top of the cliff that was on the side of the road. And they were just dislodging all of these rocks and they were just falling down on the road. And it was terrifying for a second until I figured out what the heck was going on. But just, yeah, the wildlife is something you got to be aware of, even if it's just cows.
Yeah, that reminds me of another, I think, a very underrated road and one of my favorites, the Devil's Highway in Arizona. It used to
Hmm.
be Route 666, and
Right.
people kept stealing the road signs, so they changed it to like 191. Very beautiful, long, scenic route, but you have to be careful of free range cattle and, debris in the roads and the corners from the mountains.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe that's what happened to the sign in that road in Kentucky. Maybe someone stole the street sign.
Yep, probably so. Probably so.
And so California, I think, is fascinating, right? Because there's so much diversity between. Um, I did Death Valley and Joshua Tree,
Yeah.
and then the redwoods and Muir Woods, and it's just there's and I've been to Yosemite, not on a motorcycle, but there's just so much diversity in what you can see. I did most of the PCH. Some of it was closed, but um, so much diversity in scenery in California. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, seeing the sequoia trees was like a dream of mine ever since I was a little kid, and it was better than I expected. It was like being on the set of a movie or something. Yeah, it was, yeah. Again, sensory overload, seeing how big the trees were. And Death
Yeah.
Valley, I expected to be just kind of like a big, boring desert. Not like that at all. It was very beautiful.
Yeah, it's I rode through Death Valley at about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was just quiet, stunning, beautiful.
It rained on us. It rains like 5 days a year, and we caught one of
Yeah,
the
wait, it's not supposed to do that.
but it luckily it maybe got up to like high 80s, low 90s, but the high the day before and after was like 117. So in a way, it was kind of a blessing in disguise.
It was 94 at 10 o'clock in the morning when I visited there, but then that's why the next day I rode through and at 5 a.m. So I also wanted to ask. I saw recently you posted on Facebook about wanting to thinking about starting a podcast or a live series with
Yeah.
other Indiana riders. What are you thinking about doing?
Well, this kind of gave me the idea for that because I've enjoyed, talking to you leading up to this, and hopefully we can do some more of these. And basically the same as what we're doing now. I just want to network with other riders, um, promote riding, help people learn about new places to go, preparation, gear tips and things like that. Um, our busy part of the year is coming up, so we'll get that out of the way. So towards the end of summer, early fall, I'd like to start, doing some more networking, talking with you some more, and also meeting some other people who do similar things on social media like this.
Great. So, where can people find you on social media? And where
Okay.
can they follow you? Where can they follow your adventures?
All right. So if you go to Facebook, my page is called the Hoosier Cruiser. And basically, all my Indiana excursions that are interesting, I'll put them on there. And I'll also share some of my favorite pictures and stories from long distance trips. But for the most part, I try to keep it centered around Indiana.
And I love to ask, what advice or thoughts do you have for people who are thinking about getting into motorcycling?
Um, As far as like the physical aspect of riding, practice the slow stuff, like the parking lot speed type maneuvering. There's some good YouTube resources. My favorite one is called Be the Boss of Your Motorcycle.
Hmm.
This gentleman helps with tips as far as like orchestrating the throttle and the clutch for slow speed maneuvering. Because I remember when I started riding, getting out on the road is what I was most nervous about. But that's the easy part, aside from people on cell phones and things like that. But if
Right.
you learn how to ride slow, everything else will fall into place.
That's great advice. I took at the start of my trip, I took a class at the BMW Performance Center. It was a 2 day street riding class, and it was mostly slow speed maneuvering, cone weaves, figure
Yeah,
eights, fully locked turns,
yeah,
emergency braking, emergency swerving, things like that done at reasonably slow speeds. And you think about, what happens when you're in the parking lot, you're trying to turn into a spot and someone walks out and
yeah,
you got to know not to grab the front brake. You got to, slow speeds where the weight of, you ride a 800-900 pound motorcycle, right? That's
yeah.
you're not picking that thing up. You're not keeping it from falling if it's trying to fall.
And I neglect it. I always say that, and then when I'm out and about, like, being out on the road and, scraping floorboards and curves and all that, like, I don't have a problem with any of that whatsoever. But yeah, the slow speeds I definitely need to be mindful of and go to an open parking lot and practice that a little more.
Yeah, you just need to watch anyone. All they need to do is watch one of those
What's
motorcycle rodeo thing,
unbelievable?
and what those people can do on a motorcycle, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, they could come here in my living room and just, which is very small, and just sit there and do circles like it's nothing. It's amazing watching those.
It's impressive. So great. Any other things that you want to mention or talk about, or
Just in general, if anybody had any questions, like I said, about like, gear, some tips for long distance riding, happy to help on my Hoosier Cruiser page. For anybody wanting to kind of, branch out more and travel on two wheels, the best advice I could give, like what I mentioned earlier, just try to form some sort of reasonable budget. Whenever you get paid, if you can, toss $100, in a savings account, let it build up. It's been very gratifying for us, just especially what we've been able to see in the last 5 years, looking back on our pictures and experiences. It's a very fun world. Be careful, be alert. You've got to take the good with the bad. There may be days where you're hot, cold, hungry, tired, whatever. But when you get to see the things that, like what we've talked about, the national parks, the overlooks and everything, for me personally, I look at that for 5 minutes and the boring day I had before on the interstate, like totally, that's out of my mind. It's just, that's a big thing for me. The experience with my wife and best friends and, seeing our country. It's a fun world. It's a fun life. So just try to understand the variables you have to try to get out there and make it happen.
excellent advice. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for spending the time with us today or with me
All
today.
right. Yeah, I had fun. I
Real
appreciate it.